Welcome back to the channel Wisdom of Stoicism. Have you ever found yourself wondering what's really going on beneath the surface when you're talking to someone? Or maybe you felt like there's a hidden motive behind someone's actions, but you just can't quite put your finger on it? Well, you're not alone. We've all been there, trying to navigate the fascinating, often confusing world of human behavior. Today, we're diving deep into the mind of one of history's most brilliant and, let's be honest, radical thinkers, Friedrich Nietzsche. He left us with a powerful legacy, including 18 profound psychological truths that can truly change how you see people, and even how you understand yourself. This isn't about learning how to manipulate others or playing mind games. Absolutely not. This is about gaining a deeper level of understanding, clarity, and empathy. It's about seeing the world with fresh eyes, recognizing the hidden fears and motivations that drive us all. By the time we're done, you'll have an incredible new lens for interpreting human nature, making your interactions richer and more insightful. So, if you're ready to unlock these secrets and become a master at reading between the lines, go ahead and hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Truth 1. Everyone wears a mask to survive. Alright, let's dive into our first profound truth from Nietzsche, and it's one that immediately rings true for so many of us. Everyone wears a mask to survive. Now, when you hear mask, you might think of deception or dishonesty, but that's not quite what Nietzsche meant here. Think about it. From the moment we wake up, we're constantly presenting a version of ourselves to the world. Maybe it's the put-together professional at work, the chill friend on the weekend, or the supportive family member at a gathering. We're not doing this to be fake. We're doing it because, deep down, we're a little bit afraid. Afraid of judgment, afraid of not fitting in, afraid of showing our true vulnerabilities. We craft these personas, these masks, hoping they'll be accepted, that they'll help us navigate the complex social landscape without getting hurt. So, how do you read this in others? Well, it's about looking for consistency. Does someone's public persona perfectly align with how they act when they're relaxed and unguarded? Or do you catch glimpses of something different? A flicker of anxiety, a moment of genuine passion that breaks through the carefully constructed facade. And just as importantly, where do you wear your own masks? Understanding this truth in others often starts with recognizing it within ourselves. It helps us approach people with more empathy, realizing that their outward presentation is often a coping mechanism, not necessarily an attempt to deceive. Truth 2. One's hatred for others reveals something hidden within oneself. Now, let's move on to our second profound truth from Nietzsche, and this one really makes you think about judgment. Have you ever noticed how sometimes the things we criticize most fiercely in others are actually the very things we might be struggling with ourselves? Nietzsche believed that when someone harbors intense hatred or strong disdain for another person, or even a group, it's rarely just about the other person. Instead, it's often a powerful spotlight on something unresolved, unacknowledged, or deeply feared within themselves. Think about it. Have you ever seen someone constantly mocking arrogance, only to realize they themselves have a deep-seated insecurity about their own self-worth? Or maybe someone who is obsessed with finding dishonesty in everyone else, perhaps because they're secretly grappling with a truth they haven't dared to face within themselves? This isn't about being judgmental. It's about observation. When you see strong, negative reactions in others, especially if they seem disproportionate, ask yourself, what might this person be trying to hide from themselves or from the world? Understanding this can truly shift your perspective, allowing you to react with more empathy rather than taking their criticism personally. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the loudest critics are simply reflecting their own inner battles. Truth 3. Silence reveals more than words. Now, let's move on to our third profound truth from Nietzsche, and this one is all about what isn't said. Truth number 3. Silence reveals more than words. Think about it. We often focus so much on what people say, but sometimes the most revealing information comes from the gaps in conversation, the long pauses, or the topics someone deliberately avoids. Imagine you're asking a friend about a recent challenging experience, and instead of giving a full answer, they pause for a moment that feels just a little too long. Or maybe they give a very brief, vague reply and then quickly change the subject. That isn't just awkward silence. That's communication. It's telling you there might be unexpressed feelings, a difficult memory they're not ready to share, or something they simply don't want you to know. To read this truth in action, pay close attention to those moments of hesitation, the evasive answers, or the sudden pivots in conversation. What are they not saying? What subject makes them uncomfortable? Why the delay in their response? Understanding this allows you to listen beyond the verbal, picking up on crucial nonverbal cues that speak volumes. It teaches you to truly hear what's being communicated, even when no words are spoken. Truth 4. Excessive virtue is often disguised arrogance. Now, let's move on to our fourth truth, and this one's a real eye-opener. Excessive virtue is often disguised arrogance. What does that mean? Well, think about those people who are always proclaiming how good they are, how moral they are, or how much they're doing for others. They might constantly correct everyone else, or seem to have an opinion on every single ethical dilemma, always positioning themselves as the ultimate authority. Here's the thing. While genuine goodness is humble and often quiet, an overt display of virtue can sometimes be a mask for something else, a subtle form of arrogance or a need for external validation. It's like they're saying, "Look at me! I'm so much better, so much purer than everyone else." Nietzsche suggests that this isn't true virtue. It's a performance. So, how do you read this in others and, more importantly, in yourself? Pay attention to the volume of their proclaimed goodness. Is it loud and public or quiet and consistent? Are they performing good deeds for an audience? Or are they genuinely compassionate even when no one is watching? You'll often find that those who truly embody virtues don't feel the need to constantly announce it. They just are. Understanding this helps you look beyond the surface of self-proclaimed sainthood and recognize genuine character. Truth 5. People lie to themselves first, then to you. This one is incredibly insightful and honestly a little bit heartbreaking when you really think about it. Nietzsche observed that the lies people tell you, whether it's "I'm fine," "I've totally moved on," or "I really don't care about that," aren't usually concocted just to deceive you. No, more often than not, they've already convinced themselves of that lie first. They've practiced it in their own minds, perhaps so many times, that it's become their truth. Think about it. Have you ever had a friend who swore they were over a breakup, but then you'd see them constantly checking their ex's social media, or bringing them up in every conversation? Or maybe a coworker who claims to be incredibly busy and productive, yet you notice them scrolling through their phone more than working? They're likely not trying to fool you as much as they're trying to escape their own uncomfortable reality. They're telling themselves they're fine, that they're productive, that they don't care, because the alternative, facing the genuine pain, the procrastination, the true feelings, is simply too difficult. So, how do you read this? Look for inconsistencies between what someone says and what they actually do or how they behave over time. If their words are one thing, but their actions, body language, or long-term patterns tell a different story, you're likely witnessing this truth in action. Understanding this helps you approach people not with judgment, but with a deeper sense of what they might be struggling with internally. It gives you insight into the layers of self-deception we all, to some extent, employ. Truth 6. Where someone feels superior, they hide inferiority. Alright, let's move on to our sixth profound truth from Nietzsche, and this one is a classic. Have you ever met someone who just has to be the best at everything? They constantly talk about their achievements, their expensive things, or how much smarter they are than everyone else. It's like they're shouting, "Look at me! I'm amazing!" But what if all that shouting, all that show, is actually a giant smoke screen? Nietzsche suggests that where someone feels superior, they actually hide a deep sense of inferiority. Think about it. If you were truly confident in your abilities, would you need to constantly remind everyone about them? Probably not. You'd just be confident. So, when you see someone constantly boasting, or always trying to one-up everyone in a conversation, that's often a sign they're actually feeling quite insecure underneath. They're trying to convince themselves, just as much as they're trying to convince you, that they're enough. So, how do you read this? Look for the patterns. Is this person always casually putting others down, especially those who are successful? Do they seem genuinely uncomfortable when someone else gets praise? These are subtle clues that their outward display of superiority is actually a shield protecting a very real, very vulnerable fear of not being good enough. Understanding this helps you see past the bravado and approach them with a little more empathy, recognizing the hidden struggle they might be facing. Truth 7. Most actions are driven by unconscious fear. Now, let's move on to our 7th profound truth, and this one is a real eye-opener. Most of our actions, and the actions of those around us, are driven by unconscious fear. Think about that for a moment. It's not always about logic or ambition, or even pure desire. So often, it's fear pulling the strings from behind the curtain. Imagine this. You know someone who constantly over-explains themselves, even when no one's asked for it. Or maybe you've got a friend who completely shuts down and avoids social gatherings, even if they secretly want to be there. Or perhaps a colleague who just can't say no to extra work, even when they're swamped and clearly stressed. What's really going on there? Nietzsche would argue that these behaviors, which might seem irrational or even contradictory, are often rooted in deep-seated fears. Could be the fear of abandonment, the fear of rejection, the fear of humiliation, or the fear of failure. The person who over-explains might be terrified of being misunderstood or judged. The one who avoids social situations might fear embarrassment or not fitting in. And the colleague who can't say no? They might be paralyzed by the fear of disapproval or being seen as incapable. So, how do you read this in others and in yourself? When you observe a behavior that seems a bit out of place, or perhaps more intense than the situation warrants, ask yourself, what might this person be afraid of? Or, when you find yourself acting in a way that doesn't quite align with your conscious desires, gently probe, what underlying fear might be driving my actions right now? Understanding this truth helps you approach people with so much more empathy, realizing that their seemingly odd behaviors are often just sophisticated coping mechanisms for their deepest anxieties. It also allows you to tackle your own patterns with greater self-awareness. Truth 8. When someone criticizes too much, it's projection. Now, let's move on to our 8th powerful truth. When someone criticizes too much, it's often projection. Have you ever noticed that person who just loves to point out everyone else's flaws? They might constantly harp on someone being too emotional or always late or so disorganized. It's easy to get defensive or even believe their criticisms. But Nietzsche suggests something deeper is at play. Think about it. What we see in others, particularly what bothers us intensely, often reflects something we're struggling with ourselves. For example, imagine someone who constantly criticizes others for being overly dramatic. On the surface, they might seem calm and rational. But, beneath that, they could be terrified of their own strong emotions, desperately trying to suppress them. Their outward criticism is a way of distancing themselves from what they fear in themselves. Or perhaps the person who labels everyone else as lazy is secretly battling their own procrastination demons, and by pointing it out in others, they deflect from their own internal struggle. So, how do you read this? When you encounter excessive or highly personal criticism, especially if it seems disproportionate to the actual situation, pause and consider the critic. Ask yourself, could this person be struggling with the very trait they're pointing out? This isn't about excusing bad behavior, but about understanding its root. Why does this matter? Because recognizing projection protects your energy. It allows you to filter out unfair criticism, and instead, see it as a window into the critic's own unresolved issues. It shifts the focus from you to them, empowering you to respond with empathy, or simply to let it go. Truth 9. Guilt hides behind false confidence. Alright, let's talk about confidence. We all admire it, we strive for it. But Nietzsche had a fascinating, and perhaps unsettling, take on it. He observed that guilt often hides behind a facade of false confidence. Think about that for a moment. It's not about genuine, healthy self-assurance, but rather an over-the-top, almost aggressive kind of certainty that something might be amiss. Imagine this: you know someone who seems too upbeat, too sure of themselves, especially after they've done something questionable or made a mistake. Maybe they're almost defiantly cheerful, or they dismiss any hint of criticism with a snap of their fingers, saying, "Oh, I totally handled it. No big deal." On the surface, they're radiating confidence, right? But what Nietzsche suggests is that this excessive display, this almost insistent belief in their own rightness, can actually be a smokescreen. It's their way of keeping an uncomfortable truth, a feeling of guilt or shame, deeply buried, not just from you, but from themselves. They're trying to convince themselves, just as much as they're trying to convince you, that everything is perfectly fine. So, how do you read this? Look for that unnatural cheerfulness or a defensive dismissal of any negative feedback. When someone refuses to acknowledge even a slight flaw or error, when their confidence seems almost too perfect, that's your cue to wonder what hidden guilt they might be trying to outrun. It's not about accusing them, but simply recognizing that their outward projection might be compensating for an inner struggle. Understanding this truth helps you look beyond the bluster and see the potential vulnerability underneath, giving you a more nuanced and compassionate view of their behavior. Truth 10. Exaggeration reveals hidden truths. Now, let's move on to our 10th powerful insight. Exaggeration reveals hidden truths. This one is fascinating because it's so common in everyday conversation. Think about it. Have you ever heard someone say, "Oh, I never get stressed," or "I honestly don't care at all what anyone thinks of me"? When you hear someone making overly absolute or dramatic statements like these, it's often a sign that the complete opposite, or at least a deep insecurity, is lurking beneath the surface. Let's imagine a scenario. You have a friend who constantly boasts about how thrilled they are with their life, how perfect everything is, and how they're always happy, even when things are clearly tough for them. While optimism is great, this kind of relentless overstatement often masks underlying anxiety, dissatisfaction, or even sadness. They might be trying to convince themselves, and you, that everything is fine because admitting otherwise feels too vulnerable. So, how do you read this? When you hear extreme claims, especially about emotions or situations that are typically complex, pause and consider the opposite. If someone insists they're never jealous, they might be battling significant envy. If they claim to be always calm, they might be suppressing a lot of inner turmoil. Why does this matter? Because it teaches you to question surface-level declarations and look for the deeper, often unacknowledged, reality. It helps you understand that sometimes the loudest statements are actually the quietest cries for help or understanding. Truth 11. Those who seek control often fear internal chaos. You know those people who just have to be in charge of everything? Every detail of the project, every minute of the vacation, every item on the grocery list? It might seem like they're just natural leaders or maybe a little bit bossy, but Nietzsche suggests there's a deeper, often more vulnerable, reason behind this intense need for control. Think about it. If your inner world feels messy, unpredictable, or out of control, what's the easiest way to feel stable? By meticulously organizing and dictating your external world. It's like trying to build a perfectly neat sandcastle when there's a hurricane raging inside. The more chaotic things feel internally, the more a person might desperately try to micromanage everything and everyone around them. So how do you spot this? Look for rigidity. People driven by this fear of internal chaos often struggle with spontaneity, hate last-minute changes, and can become visibly stressed when things don't go exactly to plan. They might be overly critical of others' methods, or insist on doing everything themselves because it's the only way it will be done right. When you see someone trying to control every tiny aspect of their environment, ask yourself, what inner turmoil might they be trying to contain? Understanding this isn't about excusing the behavior, but it does offer a pathway to more empathy and can help you navigate these dynamics with greater patience and insight. Truth 12. The louder the performance, the greater the inner emptiness. Now let's move on to truth number 12, and this one is truly eye-opening. especially in today's world. Nietzsche observed that the louder the performance, the greater the inner emptiness. Think about that for a moment. He's telling us that when someone is constantly putting on a show, constantly seeking attention, or trying to prove something with a big, loud display, it often comes from a deep sense of internal inadequacy or a feeling of being unfulfilled. They're performing because, deep down, they don't believe they'll be seen or loved for who they genuinely are, without all the bells and whistles. You see this everywhere, right? Maybe it's that person on social media who always seems to have the perfect life, posting picture after picture of elaborate vacations, designer clothes, or constant celebrations. Their online persona is flawless, almost too good to be true. But then, when you encounter them in real life, you sense a quiet struggle, a feeling that something is missing beneath that curated surface. Or perhaps it's the colleague who constantly needs to be the center of attention in meetings, always speaking the loudest, dominating the conversation, even if what they're saying isn't particularly insightful. Their need for the spotlight can often be a clue to an inner void they're trying to fill. So, how do you read this? Pay attention to the desperation for external validation. Look for that constant need for applause, likes, or affirmation. If someone seems unable to just be without an audience, if their happiness appears entirely dependent on external praise, that's often a strong indicator of this truth. Understanding this doesn't mean you judge them. Instead, it allows you to approach them with more empathy, recognizing that their performance is likely a coping mechanism for an insecurity they're struggling with. It also helps you avoid getting caught up in superficiality, allowing you to seek out more genuine connections. Truth 13. No one speaks from reason, they speak from pain. Now, here's a truth that might just reframe every argument, every strong opinion you hear, and even your own deeply held beliefs. Nietzsche posited that no one truly speaks from pure reason. They speak from pain. Think about that for a moment. It suggests that our opinions, our convictions, and even our biases aren't just logical conclusions we've arrived at through careful thought. Instead, they're often born from our past hurts, our personal experiences of suffering, and the emotional scars we carry. Imagine someone who has a very strong, seemingly irrational dislike for a particular group of people or a certain idea. On the surface, they might give you all sorts of logical reasons for their stance. They might cite statistics, historical events, or even philosophical arguments. But if you dig a little deeper, you might uncover a personal experience, a deep-seated hurt or betrayal that truly shaped that opinion. Maybe they were let down by someone from that group, or a specific ideology caused them immense personal loss. Their reason becomes a shield, a way to rationalize and protect themselves from the lingering pain. So, how do you read this in others? When you encounter someone with an intensely emotional or seemingly rigid opinion, instead of immediately countering their logic, try to consider, what personal pain or experience might have led them to this belief? Look for the underlying wound, not just the surface argument. This doesn't mean their pain justifies harmful behavior, but it gives you a crucial insight into their perspective. And why does this matter? Because understanding this truth fosters incredible empathy. It allows us to approach disagreements not as battles of wits, but as opportunities to understand the human story behind the words. It shifts our focus from winning an argument to truly understanding the person in front of us. And that's a powerful step toward more meaningful connection. Truth 14. One's reaction to weakness reveals their power. This is a profound one, and it gets to the core of someone's character. Nietzsche suggests that if you really want to understand a person, don't look at how they treat people who are powerful, popular, or can offer them something in return. Instead, pay close attention to how they treat those who are vulnerable, those who can't fight back, or those who are in a less fortunate position. Think about it. How does someone behave towards a waiter, a cleaner, a customer service representative, or perhaps even a child or an elderly person? Are they patient and respectful, or do they become demanding, dismissive, or even unkind? Do they treat everyone with dignity, regardless of their social standing or perceived usefulness? Someone who genuinely possesses inner strength and integrity doesn't need to assert dominance over those they perceive as weaker. Their true power isn't about control or superiority. It's about compassion, humility, and treating all individuals with inherent worth. Observing these interactions can tell you more about a person's true nature than any resume or boastful story ever could. It's in these moments, when there's no perceived benefit or risk, that a person's authentic self shines through. Truth 15. When someone fears being forgotten, they seek attention. Now, let's talk about truth number 15. The idea that when someone fears being forgotten, they seek attention. This one is incredibly common, and once you see it, you'll start noticing it everywhere. Think about it. Deep down, many of us have a fear of being irrelevant, of not matching, or simply being overlooked. For some people, that fear is so strong, it drives them to constantly seek the spotlight. Imagine that friend who always manages to bring the conversation back to themselves, no matter the topic. Or perhaps a colleague who always seems to create a little bit of drama, just to ensure they're the focus of the office chatter. Maybe it's even someone on social media who constantly posts outlandish things or shares every single mundane detail of their day. These aren't always malicious acts. Often, they're unconscious cries for recognition, a desperate attempt to feel significant. How to read it? You'll notice a pattern of needing to be acknowledged, often accompanied by a discomfort with silence or when the attention shifts away from them. They might interrupt frequently, exaggerate stories to make themselves the hero or victim, or even resort to negative attention if positive attention isn't available. It's about volume and frequency, a persistent need to be seen and heard. Why it matters. Understanding this truth helps you approach these individuals with a bit more empathy. Instead of being annoyed by their attention-seeking, you can recognize it as a sign of their underlying insecurity or fear of being forgotten. It also helps you differentiate between genuine enthusiasm and a performance. And crucially, it prompts us to reflect. Are there times when we might be seeking attention out of a similar fear? It's a powerful mirror, helping us understand not just others, but ourselves too. Truth 16. They often envy what they attack. This next truth from Nietzsche is incredibly insightful, and it reveals a lot about why some people act with hostility. It's truth number 16. They often envy what they attack. Think about it, you see this play out constantly. Someone might relentlessly criticize a successful person, pick apart their achievements, or even try to tear down their reputation. On the surface, it looks like pure dislike, maybe even hatred. But Nietzsche suggests there's a deeper, more complicated emotion at play here: envy. People don't always attack simply because they dislike something. Sometimes, they attack because they secretly admire or deeply desire what the other person has. They might believe they can never achieve that same level of success, happiness, or recognition themselves, and that frustration then manifests as hostility or criticism. So, how do you spot this? Look for situations where someone's criticism seems disproportionately harsh or obsessive, especially when directed at someone who has qualities or achievements that the critic themselves clearly lacks or expresses a longing for. It's that subtle undertone of aspiration mixed with resentment. When you see someone constantly trying to diminish another person's light, often they're actually wishing they could shine just as brightly. This understanding allows you to see beyond the surface aggression and recognize the underlying, often painful emotion that's driving their behavior. It changes your perception from anger to a more nuanced sense of empathy, even if their actions are still harmful. Truth 17. People act out their childhoods, not their beliefs. This might sound a little provocative at first, but hear me out. Nietzsche suggests that when it comes to our deepest, most ingrained behaviors, we often aren't acting from our conscious beliefs, our current philosophies, or even our recent intentions. Instead, we're actually replaying the script of our childhoods. Think about it. The roles we were forced to play as kids, the fears we were taught to carry, the family dynamics we couldn't escape, these aren't just memories. They become deeply etched patterns. For example, if someone grew up in a household where they constantly had to be the peacemaker, even as an adult, they might unconsciously jump into that role in every conflict, even when it's not healthy for them. Or if they were ignored, they might constantly seek attention, even if they intellectually believe they don't need it. So, how do you spot this truth in action? Look for recurring, almost inescapable patterns in someone's life, especially when those patterns seem to contradict their stated goals or values. Does someone repeatedly fall into the same type of dysfunctional relationship, even though they say they want something different? Do they react to stress in a way that feels oddly familiar, almost like a rerun of a childhood scene? That's their childhood acting out, not necessarily their adult beliefs guiding them. Understanding this truth gives us immense empathy. It reminds us that often, people aren't deliberately sabotaging themselves or others. They're simply stuck in a loop, repeating familiar, deeply wired programs from their earliest years. It's a powerful reminder to look beyond the surface behavior and consider the root story that's still being told. Truth 18. Their patterns are a confession, if you know how to listen. Now, we arrive at perhaps the most profound and encompassing of all of Nietzsche's truths. It's the grand finale, the ultimate insight that ties everything together. Truth number 18. Their patterns are a confession if you know how to listen. Think about that for a moment. People might not always tell you their deepest secrets, their fears, or their unfulfilled desires directly. They might not even be aware of them themselves. But their patterns, the consistent ways they behave, react, and make choices over time are like an open book, if you simply know how to read it. Imagine a friend who always pulls away right when a relationship starts to get serious, despite saying they desperately want commitment. Or a colleague who consistently finds a reason to avoid taking on leadership roles, even though they complain about not being promoted. These aren't random occurrences. These are confessions. They're not spoken words, but deeply ingrained behaviors that reveal unconscious fears, unresolved traumas, or hidden beliefs. It's like their actions are shouting the truth that their words can't or won't express. This truth asks us to become keen observers, to look beyond isolated incidents and see the recurring themes in someone's life. How do they react under stress? What kind of situations do they consistently gravitate towards or shy away from? How do they handle success or failure? By paying attention to these consistent reactions and choices, you start to see the underlying narrative of their lives. You'll begin to understand what truly drives them, what they fear, and what they secretly yearn for. It's about listening with your eyes and your intuition, recognizing that the most honest stories we tell are often written in our actions, not just our words. This insight isn't just about reading others. It's a powerful tool for understanding the hidden patterns in your own life, too. So, there you have it, Nietzsche's 18 psychological truths, a powerful lens through which to view the intricate tapestry of human behavior. Remember, this isn't about judging others or finding fault. It's about gaining a deeper understanding of the hidden currents that flow beneath the surface of every interaction. It's about recognizing the masks we all wear, the fears that drive us, and the patterns that betray our deepest truths. This knowledge is about empowerment. It allows you to navigate your relationships with greater clarity, build more authentic connections, and most importantly, develop a profound level of self-awareness. By understanding these truths in others, you'll inevitably begin to see them in yourself, unlocking new pathways for personal growth and genuine understanding. If you found these insights as fascinating as I do, and if you're ready to continue exploring the depths of human psychology, please hit that like button right now. It truly helps this channel reach more curious minds like yours. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, so you can join our growing community dedicated to self-improvement and unraveling the mysteries of the mind. I'd love to hear which of these truths resonated with you the most, or if there's one you've observed in your own life, share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you know someone who could benefit from unmasking humanity, please consider sharing this video with them. Until next time, keep observing, keep learning, and keep growing.